Imagine this. You're walking through a dense forest with light shining through the foliage, and suddenly, you come across an old abandoned well. In its dark abyss hide secrets no one knows about. What happened here years ago? The full moon illuminated a clearing in the forest, a round clearing in the middle of which stood a well. There was no habitation of any kind in the neighborhood, the forest ranger's house. Where had it come from? It's a mystery. The water in it is ice cold, delicious. I drank such water on a hot day and immediately became cool. Although old people say you can't look into the well for a long time and you can't drink water from a forest well, but she looked for a long time, thought, imagined, and now her nightmare came to life. The girl looked at the well with eyes widened with horror. Near the well appeared someone who had long been gone from the world, and she knew it for sure. And now the dead man was approaching the girl. From fear she could not scream or call for help. She just watched silently and waited. Even when the dead man's hands closed around the girl's fragile neck, she did not make a sound. She would be found only in the morning, and rumors of a mysterious death in the woods would be circulating for a long time. You got everything, according to the list I sent you? Irina asked her friends, tall and stout. The girls stood on the platform of a suburban train, all of them with backpacks hanging behind their backs. The three friends had decided to spend their vacation in the wild. More precisely, a few days to live wild in the forest, and then spend the rest of the vacation in the village, where they have already rented a house. The village is not far from the forest, and one of the girls as a child there spent the summer. Irina, Masha, and Ksyusha met at the institute, and over the years the friendship grew stronger. Helped each other in trouble, did not abandon. It so happened that Ira and Xenia were not married, and Masha has long been divorced. There were no children either. All three of them had recently turned 35, but by today's standards it was still almost youth. With a rumble the train arrived, the girls were placed in a half-empty carriage. It would take about 2 hours to ride, and then it would take about 40 minutes to walk. And it was already hot outside, despite the early morning. This year the summer was abnormally hot. Soon we'll be there. This almost there stretched for another hour and a half, so when they finally entered the forest, they took a break. They rested a bit and followed the path, choosing a clearing to their liking. They were experienced hikers, having been on long hikes many times. "Oh look! A well!" Masha exclaimed in surprise. "It's true! Where did it come from?" Irina said confusedly. "Someone dug it." "Although it is strange," thoughtfully responded Ksyusha. "Why? Maybe the locals dug it. I've never seen it before, and in this forest we in my time examined every blade of grass. The well must be old, and we have never seen it?" argued Xenia. "You were young, you did not pay attention, maybe there really was not then strange." Still as thoughtfully stretched Ksyusha. She became for some reason scared. The girls gladly drank cold delicious water, washed their faces and decided to camp nearby. The gut of the well was covered with a lid, on the chain hung a bucket, and there was an iron mug. "It means that the well is often used, the bucket looks almost new," remarked Masha. "On the other hand, we are lucky, the water is nearby, we don't have to go to the brook." "That's right," agreed unanimously. "Let's get down to business, we'll discuss the well later." While they were setting up the tents, table, canopy, and settling down in the clearing, Masha had a feeling that someone was watching her, but no matter how much she looked around, she didn't notice anyone. Until evening the girls were busy setting up the camp and cooking. The three of us gathered wood for the fire for the evening and the morning. Ksyusha made a fire, decided to boil porridge and roast meat. Marya set the table, cut salads, and Irina was in charge of drinks. Irina carried in her backpack a bottle of excellent wine, which she brought from France and saved for a special occasion. A vacation in the company of beloved friends is a special occasion. Finally, everything was ready. We sat down at the table and after a toast, pounced on the food. While they were having dinner, it became dark. They lit a kerosinka and a lantern. The fire smelled warmth, peace, and comfort. The friends were sitting by the fire talking to each other. "Don't you think that we are not alone here?" Masha suddenly asked in a whisper. "What do you mean?" Ira didn't understand. "Of course there are some animals here, but I think there are no bears or wolves." "I don't care about the animals," Masha dismissed the question. "Yes, I also have an unpleasant feeling as if someone is watching us," supported Masha Zania. "Nonsense. Battle of the Psychics, less watch," Irina replied irritably. "I sleep." The friends glanced at each other but remained silent. They knew very well Ira's attitude to mysticism and everything paranormal. At one time her mother had gone missing. Being young, single, but having a little money, Ira searched for her mother, including turned to all sorts of fortune tellers, witches and so on. Quite a few times she was assured that her mother was alive, even named the place. But of course, there was no one there. Eventually the money she had saved up ran out, and she stopped looking for help from fortune tellers. In addition, none of them, even approximately, did not tell the truth. Her mother's remains were discovered 5 years after her disappearance. She died the same day she disappeared. That's why Irina has such a sharp reaction to any mention of mysticism. Masha and her friend sat for a while longer and then put out the fire and went to sleep. In the middle of the night, Masha woke up. It seemed to her that someone was looking into the tent. She was afraid to even breathe, but she did not see anyone, only felt the presence of someone alien. The next 3 days went fine, and Masha forgot her night terror, writing it off as a bad dream. She didn't say anything to her friends because she didn't want to scare them. These days they walked in the forest, picked berries and mushrooms. In the evening they grilled kebabs and had heartfelt conversations. But one night, Masha woke up again. Only now she heard a voice, very familiar. The girl got up, trying not to wake anyone, and went out of the tent. The voice called more insistently in the direction of the well, and she, taking a flashlight, hurried there. Suddenly her friend Shusha needed help, because it was her voice called Masha. But in the clearing and at the well, there was no one. The girl heard the splash of water and looked into the well. The black water, which smelled of cold, suddenly boiled. Masha looked into the water, trying to see something. In spite of the darkness, it was not quite dark. In those days there was a full moon that illuminated the forest. Masha thought she saw someone. She bent down a little harder, and the next moment she found herself in the icy water. From the cold water and fright she lost her voice and her legs cramped. Suddenly something grabbed her legs and dragged her down into the dark, cold, dead void. At that moment, Maria realized that these were the last seconds of her life. Only in the morning, having washed up and sat down to breakfast, the friends suddenly realized that Masha was missing. She was nowhere to be found. Her friends called her, tried to call her cell phone. The phone was lying in the tent, like the rest of her things. Maria was missing. That's it. Let's go to the village. If something happened to Mashka, we need to call people. Ourselves we will do what? Went back and forth Zania. I agree, nodded Ira. Soon they were already walking from the forest to the village. And since Zania spent a lot of time there, then and orders knew, and to whom to turn. After the district police officer, the girl for some reason dragged Ira to the old house on the edge of the village. On a bench by the fence sat an elderly grandmother. Good day, Praskovia Zakharovna, said Hello Zania. Hello Zania, how is your mother? Ill? Asked grandmother. There is a little. I know why you've come. Come into the house. In a few minutes the grandmother was already pouring tea and putting some dried gingerbread on the table. In the old days there were always 2 wells dug in the village, one in the center of the village, the other in the nearest forest. The one in the woods was for the local inhabitants, forest dwellers, kikimors, swamp dwellers, and others. It has long been believed that the well is the door between the worlds. By the way, it is not customary to drink water from forest wells, only in extreme cases. Praskovia Zakharovna told me. It's all interesting, but how can we find a friend? Irina asked anxiously. Your friend accidentally violated the boundaries and now she is in the other world. Not without reason, they say. Do not look long into the well, you can fall into another world, answered the old woman calmly. Even if it is, how do we get her back? Xiusha intervened in the conversation. Grandma turned away and thought about something. She will not return. She was taken away forever. You see, there are such people who bear the seal of death from birth. They have one foot already there. These people are more sensitive to otherworldly forces, see more than others. Your friend is one of them. Her time has come, said Praskovia. And here's another thing. Wells like this can do a lot, can even the most hidden fears to revive, because it is an open door to another world where everything is manifested. So the entities on the other side see all your vulnerabilities. If Mashka fell into the well and drowned, where is the body? Strictly asked Ira, folding her arms across her chest. Are you sure it wasn't there? Question to question, the woman answered. Isn't that what you're afraid of? Having learned nothing, the girls grabbed some groceries from the store and set off on their way back. Both girls dozed off in chairs by the fire. Suddenly, Xiusha woke up from a voice. She heard her name being called. It seemed to be her name being called, but heard poorly. The sound was coming from the direction of the well. Zania threw on a sweater and went to the voice. Mashka, it's her voice. The girl accelerated her step, and here she is already at the well. Black, glossy, shimmering water in the ghostly light of the moon. A light splash brings Xiusha out of reverie. She looked into the well and recoiled. From the depths were bubbles, as if someone big was rising. A moment more, and Zusha saw through the water column Masha's face. Maria's eyes were closed, skin and lips some blue, and she was underwater. Zusha machine, as if in a trance, reached out to touch the face of her friend. She did not have time to lower her hand into the water, as the face under the water, even more pale, eyes suddenly opened. The girl only looked into Masha's eyes for a moment but could not scream. Fear paralyzed the vocal cords. Unable to move, Zusha breathed convulsively. At the same moment, a pale hand appeared from the water and grabbed Zusha by the arm, dragged her into the water. Here, on the brink of death, the girl screamed with all her might. Irina, hearing the scream through sleep, instantly woke up and rushed to help her friend. She saw that someone was trying to drown Zania in the well. Irina grabbed her friend by the scruff of her sweater, trying to pull her out. This fiddling went on for several minutes. Ira couldn't see what or who was holding Zania in the water. Just for a second, Ira saw Maria. She was so confused that she released Zusha and she fell back into the water. "Get me out of here!" screamed Zusha, flailing her arms in the water. This time, Ira managed to pull her friend out of the well. Both fell on the grass and tried to breathe. Zusha was shaking from the cold and experienced horror. "There was Mashka, she almost drowned me," hysterically blurted out Zania. "She is dead, dead. Calm down," I saw. As something very calmly replied Irina. "It is there," whispered Zania. "It will not let go. Let's see." And then Ira's gaze caught on something shiny, covered by some grass near the well. She cautiously went to look. On a piece of chain hung Masha's amulet, which she wore without taking it off. As soon as she took it in her hands, Irina was pulled into the dark maelstrom of someone else's memory. She saw someone calling Masha. She left the tent and took a flashlight with her and went to the well. Maria looked around the well and the clearing and saw nothing. She wanted to leave, but she heard a splash of water and turned around. Something caught her attention, but Irina did not see what it was. Masha froze for a long time in front of the well, and then suddenly leaned heavily, and after a moment fell into the water. It was at this moment that the chain of the amulet broke. Ira saw how a terrible force dragged her friend to the depths in a flash. A large bubble rose above the water, and it did not burst but deflated, turning into a black drop. The sight made it even more frightening. Masha never surfaced again. When Ira came to himself, he found himself lying on the ground at the well, and Zusha sobbing nearby. Both with difficulty rose and returned to the camp. "Tomorrow we return. Let them look for professionals," Irina said tiredly. "She drowned. She was lured and drowned," answered Ira after a little thought. "It's not for nothing, they say. Don't look down the well. It's a door to another world." "Grandma was right. I thought you didn't believe." "I thought so too," answered Ira sadly. And in the morning the girls gathered their things, and leaving them, decided to find a car in the village. There was no strength to take the train. Finally they went to the well. They saw her from a distance, her white, strangely long body lying by the well. Her long, wet hair was like a cloak, her skin marble, her eyes closed. She seemed to be asleep. "I'm sorry." Ira couldn't stand it and sat down next to her dead friend. The friends stood by a small mound at the edge of the clearing. Maria was looking down at them with a smile from the portrait, just as they remembered her, kind and cheerful. In a year they planned to put a small monument here. Of course, the real grave was in the city cemetery. This is just a symbolic marker of remembrance. Do you think it's there? Shusha nodded at the well. Perhaps, I do not know. It was my greatest fear, to lose you. Mashka also always worried about us, for you, Shusha. She was afraid for us, and it's how it turned out. She should not have gone alone. Look in the well. I will always love her, but with the powers, especially dark, do not joke. It's a shame it happened like that. Irina shook her head. Let's go home. They did not hear the loud splashing of water in the well. They didn't see the surface of the water turn glossy black again. Someone will soon appear in the woods, thirsty, and everyone's afraid of something.